let me introduce to you this amazing panel, and I'm so very excited that they are here representing different areas of the state, different sizes of schools. So their perspectives will be different and all encompassing, and I hope very diverse, and will meet the needs of all of you. First of all, Cassie Woods. Cassie is the UIL director at Lindsay High School, which is a small conference 1A. She just recently ended several years as speech and debate coach at Callisburg High School. Very successful at the state meet this year, by the way. And she's a former speech and debate coach at Wiley High School. So Cassie will begin, and we want to welcome her. Let me introduce the other folks on this panel, though, before she does begin. Secondly, I want you to know Kimberly Sloane. Kimberly has been a champion this year and absolutely a perfect panelist for this particular topic because she made things happen for UIL schools all in her area. She serves as the UIL coordinator for Chireno ISD. She was selected a UIL Sponsor Excellence Award winner, and you'll see why when you hear her presentation. And in 2021, she was UIL District, Region, and State Speech Team Champions. How successful can you be during the pandemic? Kimberly did an outstanding job. The third panelist that we have is JP Fugler. JP is from Lindale High School in Northeast Texas. JP has the amazing honor of being selected a Kennedy Center Inspirational Teacher Award. How cool is that to represent our state at the Kennedy Center Awards? He also is one of the coaches involved with the UIL Academic State Champions for Conference 4A this year. Welcome, JP. We're so glad you're here. And finally, adding to this illustrious panel is Renita Johnson. Renita is speech and debate facilitator at Fort Bend ISD. She serves on our regional advisory committee for Conference 6A in Region 3. She was inducted into the Texas Forensic Association Hall of Fame and serves on our UIL Lincoln Douglas Debate State Advisory Committee. So just an illustrious panel that will address for you things like, where do you take your team now after we've experienced the pandemic and the impacts of that on students who maybe know nothing but the virtual because they were freshmen or sophomores, new entries to your squad? How do we rebuild, and how do we motivate students to want to be in speech and debate and compete? But how do we also rebond those students so that that incredible connection that we know is unique to what we do in forensics, how do you recapture all that after months and months and well over a year of so many impacts, not only societally, but educationally and forensically? So I'm excited to turn this over to this panel, and let's begin with Cassie.
Hello. Okay, so like Jana just mentioned, I haven't officially started at Lindsay. I've been at Callisburg for a while, but one of the things up here, we're kind of so far away from everybody. Our biggest problem is nobody knows where we are. So the COVID really helped us it kind of stretched our wings a little bit. We were able to network and get to know people beyond just our area. But I'm going to start with just within our community. So one of the biggest things, and I look forward to continuing this at my new school, was our community. Because we as debaters and coaches, we always want those creative thinkers. And those creative thinkers are in our communities as well. So much of everything that you see about our high schools have to do with athletics. But our communities are full of wonderful people who want to support everything, not just athletics. And so we reached out to the Boys and Girls Club because we were finding that schools weren't allowing us to be on campus to do the meets. So the Boys and Girls Club here in our county, we've got about 6 different school districts in our county. And so we reached out to them. We're like, hey, could we maybe host a meet we'll put kids different places. And they're like, sure, follow the protocols, do that. So we went down there to the Boys and Girls Club, and they let us have an angel meet. And the angel meet, we held it at the facility. So then the county schools were there, and the freshmen had an opportunity to actually have a meet with other kids in person. But we were debating people from San Antonio or Olney, and Brock was there as well. And so we were able to debate people from other places, but we're able to be together. A couple of things happened from that. Boys and Girls Club were doing something called Wind Down Wednesdays, and they would just have local community members come and do after school reading. And so now our interp kids are going down there. And so that was cool. The interp kids were getting to do that. Another fun thing that happened, a member of the board was a member of the Kiwanis Club at the Boys and Girls Club. The Kiwanis Club reached out to us and then provided us with a grant for computers. And so just by strictly reaching out to this one local organization, they helped us tremendously to bridge the gap during the COVID, especially for those small schools. We don't have resources. Maybe the Wi-Fi doesn't work really good in the ag barn, because sometimes if you're in a small school, you literally debate in the ag barn. So the Boys and Girls Club just become this like central place to us. And I'd be willing to bet that most counties have a Boys and Girls Club nearby. And they are just really great. So one of the other things that we're going to continue to do, especially as far as the team building goes, is we can go down there and we can do dodgeball tournaments with our teams. And a lot of our students probably across the board are in NHS and need those volunteer hours. And so that opened the door for our students to go and to serve down there and get those volunteer hours and homework or whatever. I even had a conversation with one of the directors who wanted to do a speech club with kids down there and have our students go down there. Another thing that I want to say about the Kiwanis Club is that all of us have Rotary clubs, Seroptimists, you name it, within our communities. And so all of us were probably very tired of not being able to go. We're debaters, right? Like, the thing we love the most are being together. And so that was what hurt us. It was hard because we want, like Jana said, we want to hug each other and we want to see how everybody's doing. And so our kids were getting really tired of talking to the computer. But all of those clubs have monthly meetings, and they were looking for programs. And it gave us an opportunity to go out and we presented to a local Seroptimist club. I told them we did interp, but we did what I called presidential debate, because nobody really expected us to debate criminal justice while they're having, chicken salad sandwiches. But it gave us a chance to be out in front. And even then that provided us with more community connections. Just, retired teachers or retired attorneys who are wanting to come and learn how to judge. So the more that you have the opportunity to send your kids and to put them in front of other people, and that's something we're going to continue post-COVID as well. The virtual meets, I think doing the hybrid worked really well for us, because we would be together with other schools, but we're debating across the board, and we were able to do that. And I think we'll continue to do that. But we did that. The angel meets were completely different, because you may have, I was in a room with kids from San Antonio and I'm helping them, but I know I'm never going to cross paths with a 4A kid from San Antonio. So it really helped tremendously. And we're looking for, it kind of made our kids, I feel like, look forward to when we can be together in Austin, because now we will actually know kids from across the state instead of just our little area. Because when you travel, you just see the same kids over and over. And the online and the virtual opportunity just really gave us an opportunity to get to know people. For example, like Mr. Recker from Lavernia, he's going to come up and do a clinic. Virtual meets made that relationship possible for our students. And so we're going to continue, I hope. I know that we're planning on doing another angel meet, and we'll run it together collaboratively with Callisburg and Lindsay, and we'll do that. And hopefully we'll still continue to go to tournaments this year, but any opportunity that you have to get your kids in front of the community, and you'll be floored at, how the Kiwanis Club was, hey, we'll come and give you money for a computer, which we needed at the time, and we'll continue to foster that relationship. But those are just a few of the things with the community relationships and the angel meets, and just having a central location. It was kind of fun, where it was different, and able to go and play dodgeball in between rounds, and that made it a little bit more fun. But so that's just a little bit that I have to offer.
Okay, I think I'm next.
Yes.
Okay. So I am Kimberly Sloane. I am the UIL coordinator at Chireno ISD, which is a 1A school in Deep East Texas. And when I say ISD, I am the 2nd grade through 12th grade UIL coordinator. So I get to see it all the way from those first little oral readers until they get to me here at the high school level. So it's a little bit different avenue. And so some of my stuff, I don't really have a Kiwanis club super close or a boys and girls club. It would be a 30-minute drive at least for us to get to something like that. So this will give you a slightly different view of what we did this past year and some of my plans for the upcoming year. One thing that I did this year, even more so than I've ever done in the future, and we're going to continue that into this next year, I hope, so that we can grow our team, is that we really focus on being a team. Every kid that participated in a speech event was part of this one team, one unit, just like, even though we're in different events, more of like your basketball team or your football team is being one unit. And more so than I ever have this year, we focused on that because my team consisted of 6 students total, competing in all 7 events. Well, I say 6. We didn't do poetry this year because of that small number, but we did all the other ones. And so we had a team captain who I basically, put in charge of keeping that team spirit together and keeping an eye out for other students that should be joining us this upcoming year. And they would go to them and they would tell them in April and May, hey, you want to join our program? This is what we do. I even had one designated athlete who went to the athletes and said, don't you like to win? Let's look at our win-loss record. Come join us too. We are going this year. I have actually made contact with our local newspaper, a good contact, which I have struggled to find in years past, who has said, hey, every time y'all go somewhere, take pictures and send them to me. Even if we can't get a full article in the paper, we will get your picture with just the captions underneath saying that you went here and these are the kids' names. Shirts, I've already started working on a shirt design for the start of the year, because I swear if you tell kids that they get a free t-shirt, they want to do it. So as soon as we really have solidified our team, we're going to work on shirt designs. I'm not on top of social media as far as joining all the new ones, but we do have a Speech UIL Facebook page, which the parents and grandparents can appreciate. And then I try to remember to also post on Instagram for the students. That's all I can maintain are those 2 for our speech program. But I do find that when their parents and the community see them on their social media networks, they're not only excited about it, but they're encouraging their kids when they get to high school to be a part of that because they've seen that team and they've seen that success over the year. I'll have to learn this year, of course, what it is. But last year, what made my team happy were pink legal pads and Tootsie Rolls, of all things. I can't tell you how amazed they were that pink legal pads exist, which kind of blew my mind that they even thought that was a big deal. But after I found out they did, I kept pink legal pads handy so that if I felt like they needed a little encouragement, because last year was a tough year, I'd say, hey, here's a pink, purple, or blue legal pad. And if they came in looking down, there was a little bowl of Tootsie Rolls off behind my desk that they knew they could go grab a couple. So again, that's just that getting to know your team and fostering that team spirit of we're all in it for each other. I also want to provide as many experiences for them as possible. I think for us, the more we go, the more they bond and the more excited they are about it. Last year, including the state tournaments, we pulled off 15 tournaments, even amongst COVID. Okay. So that was a big deal for our kids to try to be as normal as we can within the pandemic. Obviously we had a lot of restrictions. I was talking to a sophomore earlier today because we're doing debate camp this week, and he doesn't think our first tournament happened until almost the end of November last year. And I was like, yeah, that won't be the case this year. That's because we were still trying to figure out how to do it last year. So we got in 15 tournaments and didn't start until Thanksgiving-ish. And I have found, because again, I said we're in the middle of nowhere. So when we go to tournaments, you're talking an hour and a half, 2 hour ride in the vehicle. That's a lot of bonding time for that team. And you make a lot of memories with them. My team captain last year started team dinners, and I actually didn't even go to most of these, but the kids themselves would decide to go meet at Chili's or go meet somewhere and have dinner together. And again, that goes back to fostering those experiences that they talk about in that team building. And we also have a local network of schools. Most years we're all different size school, but when we're not, we don't really worry about it, that we help each other. We have named ours offhand. It's not anything formal. The Deep East Texas Academic Cooperative. We do workshops kind of like Capital Conference, but for the students, so that we train each other. Virtual tournaments, real tournaments, whatever we need to do, we get together. And the benefit to that is, even as a speech coach, I can tell you interp is my weakness. Absolutely. I can handle the debate, I can handle the extemp, but interp makes me work pretty hard. But within our group of 5 schools, we hope each year that somebody has an interp coach that's a little more skilled and can work on some Saturdays or after schools with my students as well. And so we have performed that, because again, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere, this co-op that kind of steps in. And even in the academic world, I also compute computer apps, again, small school world. And I have gone to these schools and worked with coaches and students in computer apps as well, while somebody else might have been working with my interp students. And so I strongly encourage to find that network and create that network, whether you name it formally or not, near you. I think that's a good, and Cassie mentioned that her kids can't wait to see kids they've met virtually. For that, for us in this little co-op, they really think of themselves as each other. You can go into a cafeteria when we're in a real tournament face to face, and you'll see that those schools all end up sitting together because they really feel like they're one school, even though we're at 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 different schools, depending on how many kind of join with us that year. But that's what we did last year, what we'll try to do more of this year, and hopefully be able to add a few members to our team.
That's awesome, Kimberly. Thank you. Great ideas. I love the co-op idea. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. JP.
Yes, let me cue myself up. Okay, so of course, we're all going to talk a little bit about recruitment. It seems like during our section, but a few things I wanted to mention off of that we've had success with in the past, not just this year, but then particularly in this time kind of rebuilding phase, because that is what is on our team for sure. One thing we've done in the past, actually the other speech and debate coach at our school, Rory McKenzie, who's also our UIL academic coordinator, made a really good point a couple of years ago to start doing, which is as we get results in from our junior high contest, which we don't know a lot of those kids, unlike Kimberly, and I'm okay with that, but I can't imagine having to do all those different levels. So the first time that we really come in contact with them in the past has been whenever they get to high school. Of course, an issue there is that that I feel like has been articulated really well by other people before, is that in all the other activities, it seems like in football or something, they're playing that when they are so little. In band, those kids are getting hooked when they're in 6th grade. So for us to ask kids to then get hooked onto a program as difficult as ours, that really takes some time to see success. It's not immediate, and something where they're really having to stick their neck out. It's very difficult that freshman year to do it. So what Rory started doing was he started emailing the students who competed at the district level, in particular if they had success or something, and just tried to highlight that a little. Just a very quick little email. The amount of response he got from parents who he didn't email was astounding. So parents who said, like, reached out to him personally on Facebook if they happened to, know him there, or send him an email, or if they came in contact a couple years later to say just how important that particular thing was. And if you think about it from the perspective of when our students come back from competing at the district, region, state level, how little attention it might feel like they get for a lot of success. If you think about it from that perspective and then flip it there, it makes sense that if you show them that attention, that it is reciprocated sometimes in the form of them first just getting to know who you are, but then also kind of entertaining the idea at the high school level of joining with that team and continuing on. Another thing that we've done is we've taken students down to the lower levels. In particular, I think our 6th grade level was who we worked with the last time. But right before when they went to contest, we had a few weeks before, we had some select members of our team go down to the lower levels and just listen to the readers, to the oral reading contestants, and to the modern oratory, and just kind of give them general feedback. And it was a really positive experience, and just a way to kind of expose to them that there is something, beyond that at that level, that there's a corollary on the high school level, just kind of reminding them of that. And also help to make us aware of some of the people that we should be keeping an eye out for in the future. And then another thing that we've done, so beyond that, selecting criteria of who to contact, working with those students in particular before they ever get to the high school level, is to then talk to admin and counselors. And this is something that we had to do really out of necessity right before we went on break. So we were lucky enough. I don't know if everyone has this set up. I didn't at a school I was at previously, but we got notification of our enrollment going into this next year, and we were shocked. Our numbers were tiny, and especially coming off of, we still had a really successful year. We still had state champions. It wasn't any different for us in that regard. But of course, our team definitely took a hit this year in the number of students who participated. We did not have students participating. UIL participation stayed about the same, but just general invitational participation before the UIL level was not the same for us. So it was just kind of a wake-up call that we had to do something and do it quickly. So we sat down with our one of our assistant principals who used to be at the junior high, knowing that she had that connection, and she was amazing. We sat down, we just kind of laid it out, explained the situation we were in, and she reached out to the junior high counselor, who she had a really close relationship with still, organized a time for us to meet with them. They, like I was saying, selecting criteria, they looked at students who took we have a speech course at our junior high that I wish that they would do away with, so that I saw every student at the high school level, but I'm not on the school board, so I'll just have to make do. But they identified those students who took that course, and then also went through to kind of see some of the other courses they were taking, if they had availability in their schedule, that kind of a thing, and reached out to, I think, the GT teacher to figure out some people that they would kind of nominate. And then they met one-on-one as a group, and then one-on-one with these students that showed interest. And so we were able to make sure that our incoming freshman group is actually going to be healthy, still not quite as large as we would have wanted, but not as much of a hit, because we were looking at only bringing in about 2 or 3 students, and that was it. And our debate 1 numbers are normally much larger than that. And then retaining is definitely difficult as well, of course. And in a year like this, the retaining is going to be probably the most difficult aspect. So we just needed to make sure that we were getting more students in at that lower level. And that was one way that I even think coming back at the start of the school year, you might be able to still do that. Then the specialization aspect is something I just want to highlight, because it's an approach that I took whenever I first started coaching. And I know that for some of you on here, I know a lot of you, but some of you on here may not. It's not just in a COVID year, it's like any year for you. You're having this difficulty of the retention and the recruitment. And so the specialization aspect is an approach that I think that is underutilized a lot by coaches, but I've actually already heard mentioned by some of the other presenters in here, if not for just a second, but where you would focus on becoming a stronger teacher or coach on maybe just 1 or 2 events, instead of trying to figure out all of UIL and every event that's out there. And the list of events just keeps growing, which is great because it's new opportunities for our students. But instead of figuring all of them out, to just specialize on 1 or 2. And I would even emphasize just 1, especially if you don't have a background in speech and debate. we have seen so many successful coaches that do not have that background in speech and debate. I do have that background. I'm amazed by people who don't and get into this. But I've seen so many people that are successful despite not having that background. But that seems to be what sets them apart, is that they're not stepping in and trying to be the greatest coach in the world at first, but instead are figuring out an event at a time, taking it and kind of specializing. One way that you can do that, probably the best way you can do that, and this goes to every coach, veteran coaches especially actually, but is to judge. I think that we make a mistake of taking our veteran coaches and putting them in tab rooms and keeping them there. I totally understand like needing the people with the most experience to help, especially at certain tournaments, but we also need new coaches to learn that. So I think if you are a veteran coach, to put yourself out there and judge and to just see, if anything is changing in the events that you're not as familiar with, and keeping maybe an open mind to that. Can help you become more competitive, especially if you feel like you used to be more competitive in something and it's just not quite hitting in the same way. Another thing that I have done before is, like, let's say you take an event like Extent. I think it's really important to walk students through the process of what makes them successful in each of these events. And so in the focusing of those events, I would say something like with an Extent event that I've done before is to transcribe an Extent speech. So don't just have students watch that speech, but actually write down word for word what that student says, separate out the different components of it, and then just go step by step with them through each aspect of it. And that's what I'm saying about specializing and like making yourself a better coach. So you'll then notice like, what does a good extemper sound like, but also what is it that they're including in terms of content? How many times are they including a source? What does that source sound like? Because I think we have too many misconceptions about the events and like what it takes to be successful in them. And I think if you really evaluate those high level competitive people at the state level or the national level, it actually is a lot more doable than you would think. And I think walking through that transcription process really brings that to light for students. Another aspect, so we heard the mention of the angel tournaments, the angel meets, which I think is so helpful. So if you are able to organize that, that's great. If not, kind of an alternative to that, I think, let's say you were doing CX debate, so a partner debate event, taking a tournament and maybe making it your angel tournament, like maybe requiring that your varsity students won't pair together, but instead will pair with other students, would be a great way to introduce students into some of the events. And especially if you have students who, like for us, for instance, our freshmen that didn't really compete this year, like just it was so hard in the virtual world to get them hooked, and are going to be really to us starting as freshmen again this next year. That's an approach we're probably going to take, is trying to take some of the upper level kids, pair them with these kids that are still pretty new at it and green at it, and try to foster that relationship, but also just that getting them some of that immediate success, seeing what it feels like, what it's like, and getting the confidence that they can get there as well. So pairing them with a varsity student. We had a student a couple of years ago that was our president, that came up with an idea that was similar to that, that we didn't actually implement that year. And now I'm wishing we had, if we had known that COVID was going to happen, but was to take a tournament and make it our quote unquote angel tournament, where we did that across the board, where we had our captain for a certain event, walking maybe not competing at that tournament, and instead walking them through the process of going to draw for Extemp and getting ready for prose poetry, whatever it might be. And so they were just, taking on those like parenting kind of figures, coaching figures actually, and helping us out with that. So that's something that we might look at implementing this year as well. Okay, I think I was long-winded enough. I think that covers about everything that I had. So I'll pass it off to Renita.
Hello. As Jenna said, I'm in Fort Bend ISD at Clements High School, and we're 6A. My biggest concern this year was to provide some continuity for my students. They fortunately, we have a large team, and the students wanted to continue to compete. What virtual opened up for us, I think, was also the more opportunity to maybe compete in multiple tournaments at the same time. We didn't do that every weekend or, every tournament opportunity, of course, but just doing that occasionally and being able to, for example, there's one every year where we do a double, sort of splitting the team in terms of some going to a tournament where Congress and this year World Schools was the only debate event offered. So then others go to our sort of normal weekend tournament with all of the other debate and speech events. That was helpful. Basically, this past school year, practically our entire school was virtual. We had only about 20% of our student body showing up for face-to-face classes. For me in debate, where I was teaching 3 debate 1 classes and then 1 class of debate 2 and 3, that meant that I saw about 13 students face-to-face the whole week, most of whom were not on the team. As far as my actual competitive team was concerned, I only saw 2 of them, 2 of the returning members, as I call them, face-to-face, and a couple of the new members. But in terms of providing that continuity, I thought it was important because my assistant this year was new as well. And so, you can imagine trying to learn the students, who they are, and facial recognition and all of that for the first time in a virtual world. But that continuity was important for students. I think overall we fared well. One of our saving graces was just that our district had invested in Microsoft Teams for the classes. And so what I was able to do for our campuses was to have them open up a Teams for all of our competitive teams at the school. And so that allowed us to have all of our practices that we call workshops through Microsoft Teams, which is, if you're not familiar with it, it's like Zoom, except, for us, we could stay, in Microsoft Teams for as long as we wanted. So I would, send out the invites to the meetings. For the kids, it just kind of shows up just like any other class, so we can pop in and out. So, we started that right away. This was the year for our novices, sort of as JP and some others were saying, that our novices started late, comparatively speaking. This year, they did not get going until November for their first tournament. Normally, that's a little bit earlier, usually in October, but it worked out. The blessing, I think, in disguise for our novices was that most of them had no idea what they were missing. They had nothing to compare to. But of course, there's still some concern. I think, one of the best moments that I remember is that because I would stay in Microsoft Teams during a tournament and monitor when some of my novices got done with their first round and they popped back into our virtual commons in the teams, they just came in with big smiles saying, wow, that was so much fun, and they wanted to do it again. So that was great. So I do, if you're doing virtual, part of what I'm considering, of course, is that we will continue to operate some through Microsoft Teams, or to have a combination of that face-to-face, because our campus, of course, is opening back up in the fall. But we also were able to use it to, of course, provide that continuity, because one of the things that I was concerned about was the habits that students develop the year that were virtual, and then returning to live tournaments face-to-face. And so, of course, on a regular season, I could see them. They were in my classroom the afternoons before leaving for tournament. I could check in with them. I could check to see that they're outfitted correctly. I could get a sense of where they were emotionally. So having a virtual commons turned out to be something that allowed me to continue to do that, which was great. The other thing, though, in terms of just building our team and kind of stabilizing that I believe is helping us, is that 2 years ago, fortunately, one of my students who was a sophomore at the time needed to do a Girl Scouts project for something I think that was called the Gold Award. That's similar to the Boy Scouts Eagle Scout project. And so she decided to see if she could create a competitive team organization at the middle school level, because in our district, we really don't have those programs at the middle school level. The emphasis tends to be more on theater. And so she was able to do that by recruiting some of our team members to be event leaders. Of course, she first started with the campuses, sending out emails and whatnot, and the librarian became the sponsor. Of course, you know, they had to have that adult presence, but basically she spearheaded everything along with student leaders. And one of the good things about it is that the student leaders are not just from our campus, but also one of the neighboring schools. And so it kind of takes care of those students who are feeding from middle school into a couple of different Fort Bend schools. But they work with them weekly. They try to get them to a tournament. Of course, less this year because it was virtual, but they have parents assisting. From what I understand, there's no budget for it really, but the parents are willing to pay entry fees and to transport students to and from tournaments. So that helped. The other thing with recruiting and keeping the team together is, of course, is just our school is just self in terms of, you know, the course selection night on my campus. And this is not a district-wide policy, but on my campus, the students are required to take debate in order to join the team. And so I think this past year, I had about 60, 65 students in debate one. And then our policy is that you take debate two unless you go to a camp. And most of our students will go to a summer camp for speech or debate, you know, for a couple of weeks. So I tend to have only one upper level class of debate twos and threes. The course selection night is always helpful but it was more helpful, I would say, when we are face to face. This year, I think what helped us most was that our counselors put together a video to share with middle school students and parents to show our electives and fine arts across the board. And so we were able to contribute about a 3-minute segment of that video with our students sharing their enthusiasm and their experiences. And the one thing that I find, whether it's face-to-face or virtual, is that students, and especially parents, I think, want to hear from the other parents. No, from the other students, because I could talk to them as the coach, but I see a different look at reception from them when the students are sharing their experiences and what they're getting out of the program, and maybe talking a little bit about how they juggle coursework along with the hours that they put into speech and debate competition. So I recommend that as well. One of the other things that we do, and that I'm pondering for August, but we do on a regular, is that we have an orientation when students come back to school. So we have two. We have one for our returning members. And this year, that's going to be the first Saturday in August, once classes start on the 11th. And the second we host is for new members, because even though students are in the debate class in debate one, they're not required to join the team. Fortunately, most of them do. I would say about 85 to 90% of them join the team, but it's not a requirement. So for the orientation, I actually encourage all of them to come, even the ones who haven't made up their mind by then that they want to join the team. Because what we do, and I included the schedule flyer that we use in the depository, because one of we have breakout sessions, and I pretty much got the idea for what we do when we have professional development for teachers. So we start out in our commons, and of course, when we were face to face, we were able to have food, and that's always, you know, a nice draw. So we provided breakfast, and so while they were registering, you know, we're putting them into groups. Everybody gets a name tag, including parents. I sort of advertise it during our normal school open house as a sort of second open house for speech team. If a student is going to join, all parents are required to come. So we are then preparing those orientations for both, not just the students, but for the parents as well. And when we host for returning members, second year parents are required to attend, because part of that program is to do some goal setting and talk about the differences in the transition from novice into championship events. When we host for new members, we also do in their breakout sessions. And this year we did it, of course, online through Teams, where we put them in breakout rooms, and you'll see that. Normally we would color code name tags in order to break them into groups. This time we did it through a little bit through clothing, or just me predetermining, and then the student leaders wore certain colors to represent their event, kind of helping to keep track that way. The student leaders are really great, because as the students get into the breakout rooms, whether it's in the virtual world or in face-to-face, they're actually leading those sessions, giving students an overview of the event, sometimes a sample of what that event is like, and helping them to make a decision about the events that they'll get involved in. Because of course we've started classroom progress in just the basics of debate, but when they come to the orientation, the push is to help them to make a final decision whether they want to do Congress or Lincoln Douglas debate or some sort of team debate or not. And so just being with the upperclassmen, listening to their stories, sharing some experiences helps that. And while the student leaders are meeting with the students, they're going from group to group, I'm meeting with parents. And we've also broken them into two groups. I have parent volunteers, some of the more seasoned parents, returning parents who will assist. And we, in addition to telling them about the organization, explaining, you know, why it is your kid is going to come in at midnight or not finish up online until 10 o'clock at night or whatever it is, we also do some judge training. And I found that the parent volunteers are helpful with the judge training, because these, again, are parents who have helped to judge before. Because we have a large team, we rely heavily on parents being able to come in and help us fill that judge quota. I also feel like it's good for students, because, you know, we want them to carry the skills of speech and debate beyond the debate world and into their features. And so getting that feedback from community is important. So I'll say that those are good things. We have never had a formal parent organization in terms of a booster club, but just them assisting. You know, I think the first 15 years I was coaching, I didn't have an assistant. I did it by myself with not, you know, a lot of extra help, but bringing in those parents as the team has grown has helped a lot. Sometimes there are parents who will find that they enjoy helping out and they'll do it more than even what's required. I remember one parent said her student was in band as well as speech and debate, and she used it as an opportunity to just see him. You know, she thought, if I'm at the tournament or if I'm participating in the tournament somehow, then I get to see him. Whereas otherwise he's busy for the weekend and there's no contact. And it helps the parents to appreciate, you know, what the students are doing, what they're learning, and the skills. I often will encourage parents when possible to watch rounds, because it will give them, they don't have to watch their own student, they can watch someone else and kind of get a better idea as to what's going on. So one of the things that I will do soon, though, is because all of our parents complete the Fort Bend background check. So July 4th is sort of our, the mark, in that once we celebrate the 4th, then messages will go out to them to, you know, as a reminder to go ahead and complete that, so that the approvals are done by the time school starts. The other thing with students is just using them, as some of you all have spoken of, as mentors. My students leaders actually lead the practices. Of course, I'm there, my assistant is there, and we're interjecting and as needed and guiding them through, but they are essentially leading the practices. Because we were virtual this year, we actually had practices for novices outside of class. I sort of encourage students to look at it as a lab, because they are, you know, in lab for science classes and things like that. So we were able to have the novices meet at 3, let's say, an hour earlier than the championship people. And then they were, if they wanted to, they were able to then stay over and watch the championship people practice. And it also gave them an opportunity to bond with them. We also have mentors, I think as JP was talking about, where they are the more experienced students, or on a regular, guiding through those novices, answering questions to tournament as the tournaments are going on, through social media or whatever means, you know, they use for contact. Sometimes a novice will want someone to look over their case or run off ideas. And so we do all of that with our student leadership. So again, you know, my overall goal was just to provide the continuity for students. But I will say that as far as our seniors, especially the upperclassmen, missed that face-to-face contact and the social. So our orientation this year, our sort of welcome back, hopefully if things continue to go well, we'll focus a little bit more on giving them some time to socialize with each other and kind of reconnect. As far as communication, one of the things virtually that helped us, because we were using Remind.com and Sign Up Genius, we were able to continue to use that. Our parents, for judge volunteering and whatnot, were using Sign Up Genius. After the first tournament, I realized that having parents check in the same mode, using Microsoft Teams, checking in at the same time as the students were, wasn't the best idea. So we started doing parent check-in using Remind.com. And if they didn't check in with me, I could easily send them a message and just say, you know, good morning, how are things going? Or, you know, be sure you check tab room. If you have questions, you know, they knew they could reach me that way. And it enabled me to be there, be available for students, but at the same time, be available for parents. So nothing really new, but just finding those little ways to provide continuity, to keep the lines of communication open, and to hopefully maintain some standards and expectations so that our transition back to face-to-face doesn't mean that we sort of have to start all over. That's about it.
Renita, that's awesome. I love your idea about Microsoft Teams. I know when some of you may not be aware that when the pandemic hit like it did, the University of Texas in Austin campus shut down. And we literally had a staff meeting on March 13th that morning, and we're told, go home. Well, of course, we thought just like you did, well, we'll be back next week or the next, or, this may be an unexpected 2-week vacation, but we certainly did not think that our building would still be under lockdown even now. We are all, as a UIL staff, working remotely. Now, think of how challenging that is when you're trying to coordinate teams to get state championships in all these different academic events, but also athletic, music. It's just been unbelievable. And what we reverted to almost instantly was Microsoft Teams, even though we had not used it as a UIL staff or UT prior to then. But because it was available to us through the university, we implemented that. And what a great collaborating tool I think it is. And I never thought, Renita, about using it with students, but what a great idea. It certainly enhanced our staff and our academic department able to do a lot of collaboration remotely in tremendous ways. So I love that idea, Renita. Someone in chat, several people, Cassie, have asked about angel tournaments that you talked about. There are some people in the audience that are not familiar with angel tournaments. Would you kind of describe what those are?
Sure. Angel tournaments, I captured my heart the first time I went to one. It's when you take your beginning, I would say freshmen, but sometimes we have sophomores and maybe a junior or so that decide to join in the program later. But this is your very first tournament that we take these kids to. And they have, along with them, varsity members who have done this before, because there will be whispering like, is this when I do my rebuttal? Who asked what questions? Who's the first speaker? And those varsity kids are able to help them out. And it can also be, one time I had a parent who had debated in high school, and she volunteered to come and be an angel. We didn't let her angel her kid, but she was a good angel as well. So anybody that's had previous experience can be an angel. And it's run just like a regular meet. You have a judge, you make a decision, kids are awarded, the top 6 prizes. You're given a top speaker award. It's a really, really good opportunity. I always tell my angels though, so if you're considering taking your team to an angel tournament, you have to tell your varsity kids to let the freshmen debate, because those varsity kids are going to want to win at whatever cost. You kind of have to coach your varsity members on how to coach those novice members in an angel meet as well. But angel meets, that's usually when kids fall in love with debate, because it's the time that they get to stand up. They still have a little bit of support in the back of the room, but then that's when they get their feet wet and they're like, I can do this. I can really do this.
That little angel on their shoulder is kind of where we got that from. And also sometimes we call these tournaments the tournament that teaches. And I know that I've often worked with these where you actually meet with a coach, a teacher, who talks about, let's say you're in a group of oral interpreters. So I'm going to tell you, here's how you want to stand up and hold your binder. And here's what your introduction should do. So we go through some of that, and then you send them off to a round. Now, granted, it may not be a super successful round because you've only taught them that portion, but here they go off. They come back to you, and then they unpack and they tell you all about what was that round like and what was your performance like? How did that intro go? Did you forget it halfway through? And you troubleshoot and you talk and you encourage. Then you spend a little, maybe 30 more minutes teaching them another concept of performance or debate or whatever that event is that you're coordinating. And then you send them back for round 2. And one of the things that's so critical is that we secure judges that are very kind and very gracious and very encouraging to these kids, because it's their first time and it's scary, but it's like a blanket around them. It's that angel on their shoulder saying, okay, now do this, and they've got that. They know they've got something and someone to respond to fall back on, to help them, so they are not totally terrified. So that's what an angel tournament does. And they're wonderful. If you can ever host one, if you have a really good program and you're able to host those, we'd love to see those all over the state of Texas in those early months when kids are just beginning to get their feet wet. It's very, very comforting and encouraging to them to go to those angel or those tournament that teaches. Let's see if we have any other questions in chat. Does anybody want to throw something? This panel has done an amazing job, I think, of sharing with you some of their strategies. Any other questions that you would like them to address? Panelists, is there anything you would like to summarize or say, or ideas maybe you thought of as another panelist was talking? Anything else you'd like to share with your audience today? This has been very inspiring. Yeah, we're getting a whole lot. Oh, fundraising. Somebody asked a question about, do you have any great out of the box creative ideas about fundraising in order to get materials?
I don't know if it's out of the box, but we needed technology this year because that's not something we've needed a lot of. We had not even used computers in debate yet. So, I mean, we didn't have it. But I created a sponsorship packet, kind of like my daughter did travel softball. And so it was something that we had done in that world where we sent them out to businesses and just said, hey, will you sponsor us? Which was nice because we didn't sell anything. They just mailed me checks. And I was very surprised in our small community how much we did receive just from doing that. And all I offered in return was like framed pictures of the kids.
That's one of the things, like when we would go to the Rotary Club or to the Kiwanis Club, they always provide some sort of honorarium, because they're always, if you have a local club, they are desperate for programs. And so if you can find out who your contacts are, and a lot of times, so we have a break shop here in town, kind of like what Kimberly said. I mean, so one of the members of Kiwanis ran a break shop, a successful break shop. And it was like, hey, here's $400. And I'm not kidding. This is also a true story. One time I was just talking to a guy at a football game, and he was like, oh, well, by the way, I'm the sponsorship for this auto dealership. Could your program use $1,000? So, just if I know somebody works with a business, I'm going to go shake their hand and become their best friend and just tell them about our kids. But yeah, anytime you go to those programs, there's always some sort of honorarium as well. And you don't have to sell anything, because I'm with Kimberly. We're too busy for that.
I once had our curriculum director reach out to me about just checking to make sure I wasn't going to get a textbook. And I responded, and I had a good relationship with her. I responded and said, no, I don't use a textbook in class, but I wish you could buy me books for oral interp. And she said, oh, that sounds like a reasonable thing. And so she literally let me make a wish list on Amazon of books for interp. And I just got several to read over the summer. It was just such a godsend, such a random happenstance I never thought about asking for.
I also, speaking of interp books, I got about probably 50 books this year through Donors Choose. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but you can create projects there. And I said, every time I created a book project, for whatever reason, that one was funded this year, whereas some of the other things weren't. So I don't know if that was a COVID thing or if that's normal, But for some reason, people liked book projects this year. And so I said, we added probably 40 or 50 books to our interp library this year.
Kimberly, I don't know if they're familiar with Donors Choose. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
It is a website where teachers can create projects, and basically they really from anywhere. They do have a set of stores they prefer you to use, but if you want to go through the work of getting invoices from other stores, you can use those as well. And someone can donate as small as $1, or they could donate, the $300 or $400 to fund your whole project. I have found that my alumni were great about donating to projects too, because they truly know the difference that these programs make. And I actually would literally just say, hey, I have a $200 project and I need 20 people to donate $10 versus asking anybody for a large amount, because most people were happy, especially this year, to give $10 to a school and help them out.
Awesome idea. Anything else? I see where somebody got stage makeup that way. That's a good idea. Well, again, we thank you so much. I think this panel has done an incredible job of analyzing the situation. We all know that we're headed into a very still unusual world. We don't know where things are going. We don't know what will happen. We know Delta is here now. We really don't know what the year's going to look like. We all hope very much that we will be in person, and online learning will be a thing of the past. But I venture to say there will be virtual, there will be hybrids. And in a lot of ways, I think that's good. I think we've learned a lot with our virtual situation. We've certainly learned, number one, that teachers are invaluable. I knew that all along, you knew that, but I think more of the world knows that today. I think that more and more society is aware that teachers should be focused on, they should be recognized, they should be much more appreciated. Hopefully parents know that now that they've had to stay home with their children and educate them. They see that it's not an easy thing to do, that it is challenging. I am concerned about our young competitors who only know virtual. I think it will be very interesting to hear your stories later. Please come back and share those with us. When they go to that first in-person tournament, what's that going to be like? I think that's going to be very, very interesting in a lot of ways. But I do think we've learned a lot, and I think we've had to reflect a great deal during the pandemic on what we do, on how we do it, and how we help these kids grow in spite of challenges, in spite of health crisis. That's why I'm so proud of the speech and debate community. I feel like as problem solvers, we stepped up to the plate and we made it happen. Even though I'm going to tell you guys, there are a lot of nights I didn't sleep at all, worried about a virtual state tournament, knowing that I had one shot at a state congress, one shot at CX state, one shot at speech state, and making it right and making it happen and making it a positive experience. You guys have done yeoman's work. You have met the challenge. In speech and debate and forensics, I think will never be the same because we have met that challenge. What we need to do is take all of these ideas and consider what's really important, the value of what we do, and make sure that those students that we have still have that opportunity, whatever it takes. So I think we have to be patient with ourselves. You all must be very tired and exhausted after a year of, I listened to Renita saying 13 kids, that, and the online situation, some of you setting up a computer in your room so that you taught to online kids at the same time as you taught those kids who actually were in your classroom. I cannot imagine the challenges that you have gone through, but let me just say kudos. You have done the job and you have done it well. and our kids will never be the same because of you problem solving and meeting that challenge. Here's our issue, here's our problem, but we knew that what kids learn from speech and debate is so invaluable that you were willing to do whatever it took. And I watched you do that all year. I think these are 4 amazing panelists, but 4 amazing educators. Thank you so much for sharing what you have learned. And I hope this will continue to be a dialogue as we do get back to in-person and we do figure out, how do we enhance our classrooms? How do we enhance forensic community? How do we continue to build that community that is so vital to our kids? So again, kudos, thank you. I hope you're looking in the chat at all the audience members that are saying thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys are awesome. We appreciate the work you put into this program. We appreciate your ideas, and go forth with vigor. Thank you.